Hi there. So everybody out there, thank you so much for taking the opportunity and the time to listen to myself and Rob talk about how we can magnify the impact in this environment right now. As we talk to you here, obviously we're still in the middle of this tragic pandemic in the coronavirus globally. And this feels to me like such a key opportunity to talk to people like Robert Hamilton, who have through his career has obviously, to be as successful as he has and enter into lots of different projects and grow his network like he has weathered a lot of storms. And it's just an interesting time for us to have a look at right now, how do we magnify our impact in a way that feels appropriate to us? And going forward, as we create a new normal, whatever that is in the world over the next 6-12 months, obviously there's a lot of pain right now. There's a lot of suffering. There's a lot of confusion and fear out there, but there's also clearly a real opportunity for all of us to look at how we can be more creative within our lives and in our businesses and within the non-profit sector, no more than other, because obviously, our funding in a lot of different areas, in a lot of different industries has been stretched. And so even though over the last decade we've had to be super creative, it's very clear that now we've really got to work out a way in which we connect more than we ever have to our communities, build our relationships, but also be really smart as to how we use all the resources that we have to make a bigger impact. Rob very kindly has given us his time here for us to talk about him, his career, his thoughts, his values, what's most important to him, and how he believes in growth. So with that, I'd love to introduce Rob. I met Rob 11 years ago. I just checked in with Rob, and I was really lucky to work with him for the first time about 11 years ago, and has been successful in a number of different areas. From my perspective, Rob grew a great business in the centre of London that had an amazing culture. And so if people were to ask me what's great about this guy's business acumen and what has he created, for me, Rob, I think that the one thing that, of all the things that you've achieved, the number one thing is how you build relationships and how you build a culture. Because I know Instant Offices was really famous for people loving to be there, and the tea and coffee, the way that they were served, even right up to how you dealt with people and how you built relationships within that business, to me was very, very different to most of the organizations that I was lucky enough to work within. So it's really how do you build that success? How do you build that culture? How you build those relationships? And of late, I've also had, I call it an opportunity. I'm not so sure it was for me, but Rob started a new venture a number of years ago, which is called Ride 25. And I'll let him tell you a bit more about that. But I was privileged enough to get on a bike and ride in the Turkish mountains with Rob last year, which was an amazing challenge for me, very tough for me, but an amazing opportunity for me to see how hard I can push my body. And through that, Rob, from a non-for-profit perspective and a charitable perspective, has really supported so many people in Africa through One More Child. So anyway, I'm starting to steal a bit of his thunder. So I'll pass you on. And Rob, welcome and thank you for doing this.
Thanks, Craig. Nice to be asked. Thanks very much.
If you could just give us a introduction into your life, where you've been, and what's been most important for you, Rob.
Okay, so my journey really began sort of when I was in my early 20s, and my goal was always to set up my own business. So I set up a business called Instant Offices, now known as the Instant Group, and that was an online marketplace for people looking for flexible offices, which weren't very popular at the time. Have become more popular, but maybe less so right now in the Corona world. So my goal really, right from the beginning, was to try and make some money so that I could be financially stable and independent, so I could basically do what I wanted to do with life. And certainly part of that was to try and do some charitable things. So that started when I was sort of 24. It was a really old school style startup, really, and that I really generated very little outside finance. So didn't have, or had very few other shareholders. And we managed to grow the business over I ran it for 12 or 13 years, but up until 2012, from 1999 to 2012, and we grew it organically, and we grew it quite fast. So we were always growing at 30-40+% a year. So I sold that business, or part of it, in 2012 to a private equity firm, and then sold the rest of it in 2018. So what I've done since then is a number of different things. One is setting up Ride 25, Craig mentioned, which is a cycling adventure where my goal was to cycle around the world from home to Australia, and with 3 young children. In fact, when we first started, my youngest was only 6 weeks old. I needed an excuse to get out of the house. I wasn't running the business anymore. And cycling around the world seemed like an idea. So I texted a few friends, and the most unlikely people said they would come. So I thought, well, that's really odd. People I never expected to come cycling said they'd come and cycle to Paris. And then it went on from there. So now every year we have 100, 120 people that cycle one leg. So we go back to where we finished the year before. So we started at my house, went to Paris. The next year we went from Paris to Geneva. And that carried on. The last leg was Istanbul to near Ankara last year. So the goal for it, the key goal, is to raise money for this African charity called One More Child that Craig knows about, which is to take children off the streets and educate them. And so I didn't found the charity. It was founded by Hen and Harry Ferdinando, and all we do is basically provide, about 70% of their finance comes from this cycle. So we've raised about £1 million over the first 8 legs. As well as that, so I'm rambling on now. As well as that, I do various investing in different things, from cinemas, co-working, food delivery business, Ride 25, and various other things. And I've done various other fundraising things. I've just raised money to build a theatre for my daughter's school, which we've completed. There you go, that's me.
So thanks, Rob. And you say that, and I know that you do. You've got. I remember this from Instant. I've told you that story about when I was walking through the office, and you were sitting at one of the desks, and you seem to take all of this in your stride, and you've just introduced yourself in the same way. So you're very humble in how you look at things, and you just say it as if it just happened. And there's obviously an enormous amount of blood, sweat, and tears that you put into it over the last 20 years. If I was to take you a step further back and just ask you, because to me, I'm fascinated in genetics and our environment. I'm fascinated by where does it all start? And, for everybody out there that's, from, a child upwards, we're all interested in what's the magic, what's the success, what makes us who we are. And so if I was to ask you a question around when you were 8 years old or 10 years old, you mentioned when you're 24, but when you're 8, 10, 12 years old, what were your dreams then? I can assure you, it definitely wasn't when I was 8. I've got an 8-year-old, somebody who turned 8 yesterday, and we asked her what she wants to do, and she says her primary objective is to be a babysitter. So I'm not sure my ambitions were any different at age 8, to be honest. But I definitely got some ambition in my teens, I suppose, to some extent. But also I wasn't driven by hard work. I liked going out and having a girlfriend when I was meant to be doing A-levels. So I didn't do very well at my A-levels. I suppose one abiding drive for me is, I remember being in the pub after getting our A-level results, and mine were really bad. I went to a very academic school, so half the year we're going to Oxford or Cambridge, and I was, if I was lucky, going to Oxford Poly, which I was quite happy with, but I realised I'd really underachieved because I should have done better. And I remember that feeling so vividly that I really felt quite a failure, and thought I never want to fail again by not working hard enough, because I hadn't worked hard enough, and I felt that terrible sense of not doing my best. So as a motivator for me, that was a big moment, because that made me realize whatever I do, I'm going to do really, really well. So if I set up a business, I'm going to do everything I can indefinitely to make it work, or set up a charity, or whatever it is. And I think I've lived by that ever since, really. And that was a big lesson for me, age 17 or 18. So my drive was always to be my own boss. And I think most of that was really about freedom, and just having the freedom to achieve other things and be able to do other things. And I think you look around your parents' friends, or people you just see, people you read about, and you think, well, most people actually, particularly in the 80s, 90s, they got into a job and really they worked 9 to 5, 8 till 6 or whatever, day in, day out for 40 years. And there wasn't really much flexibility and choice. Obviously, the world's changed quite a lot, but I was definitely driven, like many other younger people, middle-aged people now, but younger people when in their 20s, to try and
try and have a bit more freedom to do different things, and not stuck doing one job day in, day out, and commuting every day, and being tied to a mortgage and a family to look after. So I was definitely driven. I didn't want to have that kind of burden. So I wanted a family. So I needed to become financially independent as soon as possible, so that I wasn't tied to a job in that way. So that's a lot of my ambition comes from that. I think having freedom. Then once you've been successful enough financially to have that freedom, you can then go and try and do other things. Otherwise, you obviously your whole world is about trying to put food on the table and pay the mortgage, isn't it? As it is for most people. Yes.
So you mentioned a number of areas there, and one of the things that you spoke about, which is very interesting to me, Rob, is that, and I guess there's two driving forces in a lot of our behaviour as human beings, is either pleasure or pain. And, you in your teens, you had that experience of, you didn't use the word pain, but, regret of not working hard enough, or, feeling like you failed at something, you could have done more. So that obviously was a big driver for you. But if you were to pinpoint throughout your 20s and 30s, particularly as you were building and growing and developing your business, what do you think are the three main things that have made you so successful?
Okay, so I think the biggest thing for me, and I think this is the same in all life, is to set a clear objective, medium term, 3-5 year kind of objective, or longer term objective. So I had a very clear objective from age 20-ish to build a business to be big enough that I could sell it, and so that I could be free. So that with Instant was and I was totally transparent with the rest of my team. Everybody knew what our goal was. Obviously, we didn't know what it would look like, but the aim was to build a business that was strong enough that was worth something, that was valuable. And so I think the in terms of what's successful, I think the most important thing for success is you have to have a goal. Even if it's, forward back to your weekend, I like having a goal for a weekend. So it might be, I want to chop a tree down, or I want to, I don't know, steam clean, or whatever it is, some silly weekend thing. But I like to have some sort of goal, and then at least at the end of that weekend or at the end of that decade, you can look back and say, yes, I did achieve that. So for me, setting a goal is absolutely vital, and then the focus, having that focus to keep going and try and achieve that goal. So setting a goal, being totally focused on it, and having the persistence to keep going. So whatever barriers, obviously there's millions of barriers that are put up for all of us in everything we try and do. But if you're focused on that goal and you're persistent at keeping going, in the end, you'll achieve your goal or something very close to it. So I think that those are the key things. And I think one part of that goal setting is to keep the goal very simple. So you can always, exactly what it is, and all your team knows what it is, and your family knows what it is. So you're all working towards the same thing. So if you're asked to deviate in some way or look at something different, you can think, well, is that going to help me achieve my goal or not? If it isn't, then you obviously don't do it. So in the business, when I was running Instant, we had a one-page business plan on everybody's desk, which was updated quite regularly every 3 months. At the very top of that goal, that plan was, what is the objective for us all over the five-year window? So everybody, and all of the things off it were all the tactics we needed to do, all the little parts of the business plan we needed to do to achieve that goal at the top. And actually just setting that focus, everybody in a business being aligned to that focus. And if you're asked to do something, everyone in the business was told to look at that plan. And if that objective, and if the thing they're asked to do wasn't going to achieve that goal, then they shouldn't be doing it.
Right.
Yeah, and that's just about the focus, precision, focus to keep going for one goal. Obviously that goal, the bits at the bottom part of that goal might change quite regularly, but the bit at the top didn't really change at all. It was the same for probably 7 or 8 years.
And so you talked about everybody in the business, Rob, and as I shared earlier, I think you created an amazing culture. So talk to us about what would you say is the most important thing that you've learned about creating a winning team, a winning culture? How do you do that? Because in both senses. So if I give you 2 quick examples, one is that you build a team from scratch. So you get the opportunity to create that sense of trust and that sense of culture. But there's many people listening to this, I'm sure, that have just walked into a charity, a social enterprise, a community interest company, a commercial company, and they've inherited a situation or, a culture that isn't what they want it to be. Mm-hmm. So if you take those scenarios, either, if you could please answer both of them. If you've got a team from scratch, how do you build that winning culture? And if you walk into an environment that isn't what the culture that you need it to be, what's your advice?
Well, my thing is always is about, and I think this is partially bred out of I need to keep things simple in my own little brain to be able to achieve things. So for me, if you're honest and open with everybody you meet, whether it's customers, suppliers, people working with you, staff, you're honest and open, then you can't really go wrong. And you build trust, you build culture, because you're all trying to achieve the same thing. And people believe in what you're saying because you're true. You believe in what you're saying, and you're saying something because, so for example, when we had a period when things were really bad, back in sort of .com days, bust days in 2001, too, having had a business that had grown from nothing quite quickly, we suddenly plateaued and we were starting to lose money. So my strategy with that was to be 100% open. So I was totally open with everybody about the accounts, about our financial position, and what would happen if we carried on trading as we were, i.e. people would lose their jobs, because that was what was going to happen. So what that did, it got everybody to buy in. That was right. That was the beginning of the culture, really, was getting everyone to buy into a common goal. And that was, rather than hiding bad news, we were open about the bad news.
Yes.
Gave everybody a plan how we were going to trade out of it and what everybody needed to do, and everybody bought into it. So people who had nothing to, everybody, part of the remit was everybody had to have some involvement in sales, because that was the way to get out of it, was to sell more. So everybody did it. The people who were the most unlikely salespeople became salespeople. So yes, honesty and trust. And if you do that when times are good and when times are bad, so when times are good, you're sharing some of the good things. When times are bad, you're sharing in terms of, I don't mean in a monetary sense, but sharing the pain in terms of letting people understand, then I think everyone's on the same path, and everyone wants to be together and working towards a goal.
So if you zoom out from the company and you look at much bigger systems that you now spend lots of your time thinking about and working towards, One More Child is just one example, but you're involved in supporting lots of us to do interesting things around the world and to create impact. When you look at, Rob, if we were to zoom out to the planet, and with all the resources that you've got now, financially and emotionally, and your network and how you communicate, everything that you've learned, let me ask you this question. When you look at the world, what do you feel is the biggest challenge right now for us? And how do you feel that we can go forward to overcome it or solve it?
For me, I think inequality is, I think there's always been inequality. And you look back in hundreds of years ago, inequality was very stark. But I think in today's world, inequality, both country to country, but I'm probably thinking more just within Britain, the inequality in our country is pretty stark. And you do, the feeling I have, I haven't got the statistics in front of me, but is that the rich are getting richer and the poor are staying still. And I think I'm not against the wealthier people being taxed more, or at least tax loopholes being removed or reduced, so that everybody is paying their fair share. But the second thing, I think the bigger problem is inspiring and motivating people who currently aren't working to work. And I think that's a big problem. There's a high percentage, there's a big chunk of our country doesn't work for various reasons. And I think we just need to continue to try and improve the reasons why people aren't working. Be it down to, in some instances, drug misuse, or lack of education, or lack of training, or whatever. But we've got to be, with the way the welfare state works, in terms of maybe some people find it easier not to work. I mean, we've got to change that, and I know that we're trying to, so that people really are inspired and motivated, I think, are the words, really, to work.
So when you look at that and you talk about inspiration, how do you, because if I look at your resources, what I mean by resources is, okay, so money's one resource that you have, but you have many other resources. How do you leverage everything that you now have to inspire people to make a difference? So for somebody who's running a charity right now or running a social enterprise, what would you say are the ways in which they can take their money, they can take their time, they can take their energy, they can take their people? What do you think's most important when you're trying to leverage something? What's the most important thing that you focus on?
Okay, so I can probably only give some examples, really. So this one project I've been involved in for the last 18 months is building this theatre, a performing arts centre at my daughter's. It's a special school, a special needs school. So I went in to chair the fundraising committee and raise the money. We had to raise £2 million, which is over £2 million. We got a big government grant from it, and the rest of it we had to go out and raise from parents and wealthy people. I suppose what I took to that was just sort of business skills, so really sales skills. It's really just a sales exercise of, finding people, finding targets, contacting those targets in an efficient way, but in a way that you would do when you're trying to win sales in a business.
Yes.
Targeting them. How are you going to target them? Getting the meetings, have the meetings, follow up for the meetings. Just the basic things you need to do. Sales is great, more than anyone. We were successful. So we raised all the money. In a year, we raised £2.2 million. That was from a population, and not I would say not a particularly, a lot of it didn't come from the parents. It had to come from the outside world, so local benefactors. But it was taking those business principles, but putting them in place in a charitable, a fundraising situation is what I think made quite a big difference. How else do I use? I suppose my network-wise, the cycle it's a byproduct, but it's making good use of my network of people, really. So the reason we raise quite a bit of money for that is because there's lots of people who own businesses or have run businesses involved in it, and they're generally quite resourceful and can be quite resourceful in how they fundraise or donate or sponsor. We have lots of shirt sponsors. So that again is using sort of business network to do good things rather than just be a way of generating more profit.
And Rob, what do you say to yourself when things get tough? Because I think you mentioned barriers that come up for all of us all the time when we're looking to achieve a goal, and there's an ingredient, like I see it as a recipe baking a cake, there's an ingredient within successful people where things get tough. There's something you do or something you say to yourself, or you give yourself a talking to, or you ask yourself a different question to say, this is going to be a must for me. This is not going to get in my way, or this is not happening now, or we're going to break through this. So can you talk to me a little bit about, your internal resources, about how you stay strong, Rob, when things get tough?
I think having a stable family life is very helpful. So my wife and I have been together for a very long time, so that really helps. That's a good start. Having a stable, happy home life is really important. But I think, or important for me, and it's not necessarily important for other people, but
when it gets to crunch, what do you say to
so I think it goes back to that focus thing. So if I've set a goal that I'm totally focused on achieving, then whatever you have hundreds of barriers, but you just knock them down as quickly as you can. And if you're so focused on that goal, you don't really see anything other than the goal at the end, and you're just finding your way as quickly as you can or as efficiently as you can to that goal at the end. So anything that comes along on the way is just something that needs to be batted to the side or knocked over. And so I never once did I even remotely contemplate not doing it or giving up. Same with Ride 25. There's lots of challenges in a different way with that. But it's, we'll find a way, whatever we need to go through Iran in a couple of years. Yes, we might not be able to go through Iran if they won't let us in, if they won't let British people in, but we'll find another way around. There's always a way around. There's always an answer. And if you've got that goal in mind, you're going to achieve that end goal, then whatever barriers put in the way, you'll just keep going until you get through them.
Where did you learn that from, Rob? Where did you learn that this is my goal, that's it? It's not an option.
I think for me, I just work well by having a goal. And that's, and I think, it's just really important to me. If I don't have a goal, I wouldn't, if I start my week without a goal for the week, whatever the week is, then I won't achieve very much. I'll deviate all over the place. If I have my goal for the week, I will go do everything I can to achieve those things in that week, because that's what I think is possible at the beginning of the week. So it's breaking everything down, isn't it, into little increments to get to your end point.
It is. What's quite, I think unusual about what I've sensed in you is, to me, there's two things I'm being very simplistic here, but for me, there's two things that matter in life. There's achievement and there's fulfillment. And I've always learned that achievement is, a science, and fulfillment's an art. In other words, to achieve things is one thing, but to be happy and fulfilled and at peace and enjoy your life is something different. And of course, they're linked. Of course, if you achieve something, then you feel something, so they're linked. But from what I can see as a friend of yours, is what you have managed to do is to have that goal, to stay focused every weekend, every week, every month, every year, and every decade. You know, you've got goals, and you've still got goals, even though you've been successful, but you love your wife, you love your kids, you love your life, you love your friends, you have a good time, and you care for people. So I'm interested in how you balance that inside you, where 1 minute Rob Hamilton's got a real focus and he's driven, and then the next minute he's not driven at all and he hasn't got a goal because he's playing Uno with his 8-year-old and he doesn't need to be in that place.
So I think obviously when I was building the business, I was so focused on the business and achieving. I was lucky in that a lot of that focus was when I didn't have children. So I only had children 12 years ago. So, so that was very, very helpful. So when my children were born, I remember changing my work habits so that I came home and saw my baby daughter, you know, in the evening, not every night, but as often as I could. So we changed the work hours in the office so people could work slightly, because I knew I wanted to start leaving at 5:30, having always worked really late in the past. So having a family, you know, changed. It didn't stop my drive, but I had to adapt how I was working so that, you know, work wasn't taking over the more important thing, which is being around for your children from the beginning. So obviously things have changed more in the last few years, really, because I'm not driven in the same way. So I have to. My drive is somewhat different. So I will. You know, my objective for the week is to spend a third of my time doing investment related things. You know, either small investments or bigger investments. A third of it is on charitable things, and a third of it is on what I would class as personal projects, which might be a refurbishment and rebuilding project, that kind of thing. So in the past that wouldn't have seemed very driven to me, because I'd have thought I'm not building something. Actually I'm doing the fundraising bit, I'm doing other things, I'm being much more around playing Uno with my children and doing homeschooling or whatever at the moment. I'm at peace with that, because I don't have the goal. I don't want to build a business the same size as the business was before, or build another business that size. I'd like some of my investments to do that, but they'll get the fulfillment and they'll be the ones having to drive to do that. I don't feel the need, you know, like, you know, some people just keep going forever. I remember an old school, not a school friend, but school acquaintance that I re-met in the 20s, around about 30. And he made some comment about, why are you working so hard? You've made enough money in the business now. Why don't you just stop? And I just thought that was ridiculous. That's a ridiculous thing to do. I haven't achieved my goal yet. But then I look at people who have, you know, built billions of, you know, massive businesses and are just as motivated now. I look at them and I have the same view that he had on me. Again, why are you keeping going? Why don't you just enjoy your life? So I suppose I just have my ambition is at a certain level, and in terms of business growth wise, and my ambition is different now. I want to do different things and achieve different things, and it's not about increasing wealth, basically.
And so, Rob, when you look at this, and I know that, you know, my questions have talked a lot about what's important in business and what's important with success, because people right now, you know, I feel it's really important that we look at, we look at, from a business perspective, from a charity perspective, from a impact perspective, we need to have a goal, we need to have focus, we need to have trust, we need to be open, we need to be honest. You know, you've given, for me, there's 5 major things that you've talked about so far in this interview. When you look at what my next question really is, do you spend time, because you're so focused, you think a lot about the outside world, Rob, and you're really compassionate about the guys in Africa and your friends and different people. Do you worry? I mean, do you worry about what's going on? Or do you say, well, I only worry what I can focus on? I mean, do you sit and ponder and introspect, or do you spend time, you know, in an emotional place, like a fulfillment place rather than an achievement place, and, you know, think about the world in different things? Or do you just stay focused? So do you worry about the world? No,
I think I spend less time than I probably should do in that zone, really, because I think I'm very action focused. I've got to be doing things to feel I'm achieving anything. So, you know, that's definitely a fault, I suppose, in that I'm sure it'll be better if I did spend a bit more time thinking, reading. I definitely don't read as much as I should do. I have time to, but I don't. I suppose that I need to be achieving, doing action rather than reading. That's an issue for me. So yeah, I don't think too much about it. If I think about a problem like one more child stuff, and yeah, I think about that and I do what I can because I can action things. I can
do it, yes,
to make a difference there. Yes. Same with this school building project. Those are things I can actually do something about.
So when you guys, if you don't mind me asking, when you're on holiday or whatever, are you still like action orientated? How can I do this? Or do you have an opportunity to say, okay, nothing?
I don't know. Holidays don't happen anymore, do they? Aren't they cancelled? They've gone, haven't they? No, I will read. I will read books that hopefully will inspire me. So I still really enjoy biographies. But business biographies massively inspire me. People's stories massively inspire me. And so that's I read recently. I'd read 2 books back to back. One was about the founder of Nike, and the other was about the sort of 4 big Facebook, Google, Amazon, Netflix company, the big fangs, the big 4, and it was really interesting that actually Uber was the other part of that. So Nike, there was Nike, which was built in the old-fashioned way, in that they never made a loss. Even in the first, I think 1 year they made a loss of $10,000 in the 70s, and the investors were shocked at what was happening. And of course, you look at the other 4 who have. Or the other businesses have lost billions and millions and billions. And that interests me, is how the world has changed. You really have to build business. Even Google built business without that much capital to begin with. Became super profitable. But the businesses now are using billions and billions. It's that interests me. I don't think it's particularly healthy. I think maybe we'll go back after this virus. To be a bit more old-fashioned in how how businesses are built.
So you talk about these guys that inspire you and all these stories that you've read and heard about and are fascinated by. Who do you feel are the 1 or 2 or 3 people that have inspired you most in your life, Rob?
Well, the book I've read, so I've not met him, is it's not written by him, about a chap called Chuck Feeney. Have you heard of Chuck Feeney?
No, I haven't.
So Chuck Feeney built duty-free shoppers. So all the duty-free shops you see in airports. But the great thing about him was he built this business. It's worth billions of pounds, and he spent his whole life giving it all away. So he's given away literally billions of pounds. Always flies economy, not interested in the monetary side at all. Was just wanted to give the money away. So it's a brilliant book. It's called The Billionaire That Wasn't. And I found him very inspiring, because he was not the person who wants to keep building the business. He just wanted to give it away. That was his goal.
Yes, amazing.
He's really inspiring. In terms of people I've met, Mark Dixon has always really inspired me. He's the man who built Regis into a FTSE 100 probably at some points. And so he was a customer of mine in my earlier business. And when I first met him, I think he was one of the fastest billionaires in the country, and he was incredibly humble, decent, always very reasonable to me, would always return my calls, etc. And I just thought, he's still going now, 30 years on. He seems to be just as driven and motivated as he was when he's in his earlier years. And he's also got a weekend project, which means he's the biggest producer of rosé now, and the biggest will be the biggest producer of sparkling wine in Britain. So I find it pretty inspiring.
Yes. And so when you look, you've talked kindly about a lot of different areas. When you look at the year in front of you and, all the hours. So, apparently there's 8,760 hours in 1 year that we all have. That's, I love that saying that there's only one thing that's equal in all of humanity, which is our 24 hours in our day. When you look at the whole year and all these hours that you're using all this time, do you consciously say, you mentioned earlier that you have a third for this, third for that, third, different categories of how you spend your time. Talk to me more about how you've made that decision that this third is for investment. This, I'm going to spend this great amount of time with my family. How do you look at time in that way?
Well, I think I learned early on in my 20s that I'd work really, really hard week to week, but I had to not work at the weekends. So I've hardly ever worked properly at the weekends. So all of my career, I've never really worked the weekends. I've always tried to have evenings as much as possible and do something else, socialize or whatever. So for me, and that wasn't any great brainwave. It was just necessity. I just needed that compression time to be back on form again for Monday. I needed to try and be fit. Having said that, I found a photo of myself yesterday. A lockdown project is making photo books for various things. And I found a photo of myself with a massive double chin in my 30s. So obviously I wasn't keeping very fit then, but I thought I was fit, keeping fit. So I think from necessity, I've always kept separate. So tried to keep work and play separate. I've always taken holidays regularly. So I'd like look at the world as the year as a sprint, really, 3 month sprint. So I'd work really hard for 3 months, and then you kind of have a holiday and you sort of recharge properly. I wouldn't ever work on holidays. And then come back and you're fully energized, ready to go again for another sprint. So like the year is broken down into 4 sprints really, and the week's like mini sprints, with the weekends in between. And I just found that, but for me, that works really well. To be really energetic during the week, but then turn off and be more creative and think of better ideas at the weekends. So in terms of how I still have that same principle now. I still very much work Monday to Friday, even though I'm not going to an office every day or in a single job for anything. But I'll try and make the weeks count. And the most productive way of spending my time, or how I want to spend my time, is on those 3 different areas. So I don't clock exactly, but I'd say roughly I spend a third on each of those different areas.
And Rob, when you look at different areas of life, and when you look at the world that you've spoken about today, and instant offices and one more child, and the inequality, if you like, and the variation that we have in the way that we all live our lives and what we focus on and what our goals are. When you look at after this coronavirus pandemic or a new normal, or how we are able to get a vaccine and, hopefully within a year, and, things change again. And then if you zoom forward and you look at, all of our kids and the world unfolding, when you look at the bigger things like climate change and, you've mentioned poverty, and inequality and what have you, and what you want for your children in the future. Do you feel that business and charity, do you feel that we need to really change the way we look at the natural world and the way that we behave? Because you're very action orientated, at least in your business world. Do you feel that after the coronavirus, we really need to change the way we're living? Or do you think we just need to all be more aware and make a 5% shift?
Well, I think there's a general movement that in the business world, that this is before Corona, that businesses need to have be more than profit making. They need to have a purpose, a social purpose beyond, or a purpose beyond money. And I think that's a kind of clear trend that's gone on for some time, but it's possibly being accelerated by the sort of younger folks, people in their 20s, who really don't want to work for businesses that don't have that clear, proper purpose or doing good. So obviously everyone's had time to reflect properly on things that go well in the world and things that go badly. So clearly this is definitely a pivot point for doing more of the purpose-led stuff.
Right.
But equally, there's going to be a lot of financial pressure for a lot of businesses. And unfortunately, at that point, that's when some of the purpose-led stuff gets thrown out, doesn't it? Unfortunately. So I think there'll be many businesses, possibly the stronger ones, that are able to be more focused on their purpose. But unfortunately, there will be many that are just struggling to survive. And I think it will be lost on them for obvious reasons.
And so what's your, I just wanted to ask you this final question, Rob, which is in this interview, which is, if you've given us so much in the way of, looking at our purpose and focus and being honest and being open and being transparent and living our values in that way and building a culture and being, driven, and no matter what barriers come towards us, then we knock them down because we're focused on going forward. If you summarize that for me and just think, somebody who is in that camp of struggling, financially, and, they come out of this, or they're in it right now and they need to pay the bills, they need to get to a different place. When you look at businesses, what do you think are the 3 most important things the moments and experiences in your life that you feel are most important? In other words, if you could summarize the interview, what are the 3 most important things that you feel that you can give to us? You've mentioned so many.
I suppose when you have those times of adversity, when things are really bad for whatever reason, there is always a way through. So Corona now, I mean, obviously things look pretty bleak for an awful lot of different businesses, different sectors.
Yes.
But I think it'll be amazing. I think it's actually one little anecdote. I remember a friend coming to see me a few years ago now, and she came to stay with us. And for something had happened in my day. It was a contract, a supplier contract, but it was important to the business at the time. And it had basically all gone wrong, and I was so upset about it. And I thought, like, it was the end. I thought business, it was going to be the beginning of the end of the business. I was really angry about it. So this friend happened to come and stay that evening. Obviously went on about it that evening. So a year later, she comes to stay again. She said, "Oh my God, whatever happened to this issue?" And she even remembered the customer name and everything. I said, "God, I don't know what you're talking about." And at that moment, it was so bad that I thought it was such a bad thing. And actually, a year later, I couldn't even remember what she was referring to. And it makes you realise that when something seems, particularly now, obviously so many things seem so awful, you'll find your way to get around it one way or another. And actually, you'll be amazed in a few weeks' time, even, well, certainly months' time, you'll look back and think, oh yeah, was it really that bad? Because I think you forget sometimes how your emotions take over. You really think how terrible things are, and actually they're not that bad. And to have something that she even remembered, because I was going on about it so much, and a year later to have not even remembered it, that to me is a big lesson. Yeah, no, that's really powerful. And I think hindsight's a wonderful thing, but to realise that things in this coronavirus and the pandemic, and if we work hard and stay focused and be honest and open and trustworthy, everything that you've said today, if we can have a goal and a purpose and just keep going. One of my big things that I've realized, and I look at climbing Kilimanjaro, which I've talked to you a lot about, is just take one more step. I remember them saying that to me on summit night, is just take that one more step, because you think you want to give up, not that it is nearly as painful as a lot of people experience in their lives. But I remember being, there -20, my water had frozen. I wasn't in a great place psychologically. And I just remember them saying to me, just take one more step. And that's a really good metaphor for all the action that we need to take in our lives. Rob, I can mirror that with my cycling, actually. The cycling, you might be on a bike thinking, I cannot get up this hill, there's no way. But actually, you get off the bike, you have something to eat, you have 5 minutes rest, you're a different person 5 minutes later. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And that's the same as business, isn't it? You're really stuck, go to bed, go and do something different for a day or two, just change. Yeah. Absolutely. Rob, listen, thank you so much. The process, actually, I don't know if you said these words, but this is what's coming to me, is I fill my head sometimes with so much stuff. And it's the old adage of being strong and keeping things simple and keeping your values simple. Just be honest and be open and work hard and have that at the top of your piece of paper, like you did at Instant, and having, and taking all those small goals and saying, if what you've been asked to do, or you want, or you want to achieve something, if it doesn't make that go faster, then don't do it. Just stick to it. So I've learned a lot. Thank you, mate. Thank you so much for all your time. It's been great talking to you. Thanks for having me, Craig. Appreciate it. Many thanks. Thank you so much.